I suppose so. Are you?
Yes. Horribly tedious parties they give, don't they?
Horribly tedious. Never know why I go. Never know why I go anywhere.
I come here to be educated.
I hate being educated.
So do I. It puts one almost on a level with the commercial classes, doesn't it? But dear Gertrude Chiltern is always telling me that I should have some serious purpose in life. So I come here to try to find one.
I don't see anyone here tonight whom one could possibly call a serious purpose. The man who took me to dinner talked to me about his wife the whole time.
How very trivial.
What did your man talk about?
About myself.
And you were interested?
Not in the smallest degree.
What martyrs we are, dear Margaret.
And how well it becomes us, Olivia.
Lord Caversham.
Good evening, Lady Chiltern. Has my young, good-for-nothing young son been here?
I don't think Lord Goring has arrived yet. Why do you call Lord Goring good for nothing?
Because he leads such an idle life.
How can you say such a thing? Why, he rides in row at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes to the opera 3 times a week, changes his clothes at least 5 times a day, and dines out every night at the season. You don't call that leading an idle life, do you?
You are very charming, young lady.
How sweet of you to say that, Lord Caversham. Do come to us more often. You know we are always at home on Wednesdays.
Never go anywhere now. Sick of London society. But I shouldn't mind being introduced to my own tailor. He always votes on the right side. But I object strongly to being taken down to dinner with my own wife's milliner. Never could stand Lady Caversham's bonnets.
I love London society. I think it has immensely improved. It is now entirely composed of beautiful idiots and brilliant lunatics. Just what society should be.
Which is Goring, beautiful idiot, or the other thing?
I am obliged for the present to put Lord Goring in a class quite by himself, though he is developing charmingly.
Into what?
I hope to let you know soon, Lord Caversham.
Lady Markby, Mrs. Cheveley.
Good evening, dear Gertrude. So kind of you to let me bring my friend Mrs. Cheveley. 2 such charming women should know each other.
I think Mrs. Cheveley and I have met before. I did not know she had married a second time.
Well, nowadays people marry as often as they can, don't they? Most fashionable.
Have we really met before, Lady Chiltern? I can't remember where, but I've been out of England for so long.
We were at school together, Mrs. Cheveley.
Indeed. I've forgotten all about my school days. I have a vague memory that they were detestable.
I am not surprised.
Do you know, Lady Chiltern, I am so looking forward to meeting your clever husband. Why, since he has been at the Foreign Office, he has been so talkative in Vienna. The papers have even managed to spell his name right. That itself is famed in the continent.
I hardly think there will be much in common between you and my husband, Mrs. Cheveley.
Oh, cher madame, quel surprise! I have not seen you since Berlin.
Not since Berlin, Weidmann, 5 years ago.
Ah, and you are younger and more beautiful than ever. How do you manage it?
By making it a rule to speak to only perfectly charming people like yourself.
Oh, you flatter me. You butter me, as they say here.
Do they say that here? How dreadful of them.
Ah, yes, they have a most wonderful language. It should be more widely known.
Good evening, Mrs. Markby.
I hope you brought Sir John with you.
Oh, I have brought a much more charming person than Sir John. Sir John's temper, since he has taken seriously to politics, has become quite unbearable. Why, now the House of Commons is trying to become useful. It does a great deal of harm.
Well, I hope not. At the very least, we do our very best to waste the public time, don't we? Who is this brilliant person you have brought to us?
Her name is Mrs. Chiltern. One of the Dorsetshire Chiltern, I suppose. But I really don't know. Families are so mixed nowadays. Indeed, as a rule, everybody turns out to be somebody else.
Mrs. Chiltern, I seem to know the name.
She has just arrived from Vienna.
Ah, yes, I think I know who you mean.
She goes everywhere there and has such pleasant scandals about all her friends. I really must go to Vienna next winter. I hope there is a good chef at the embassy.
Well, if there's not, the ambassador shall certainly have to be recalled. Pray, point out Mrs. Chiltern to me. I should like to meet her.
Let me introduce you. My dear, Sir Robert Chiltern is dying to know you.
Well, everyone is dying to know the brilliant Mrs. Chiltern. Our attaches at Vienna write to us of nothing else.
Why, thank you, Sir Robert. An acquaintance that begins with a compliment is sure to develop into a real friendship. It begins in the right manner, and I find I know Lady Chiltern already.
Really?
Yes. She has just reminded me that we went to school together. I remember it perfectly now. She always used to get the good conduct prize. I have a distinct recollection of Lady Chiltern always getting the good conduct prize.
And what prizes did you receive, Mrs. Chiltern?
My prizes came a little later on in life. I'm sure they weren't for good conduct. I forget.
Well, I'm sure they were for something charming.
I don't know as if women are always rewarded for being charming. I rather think they are punished for it. Certainly there's nothing that ages a woman so much as that of a faithful admirer. At least that's the only way I can account for such haggard looks of so many of your pretty women in London.
What an appalling philosophy. I'm afraid I can't agree with you there. But do, sit down. And now tell me, what makes you leave your brilliant Vienna for our gloomy London? Or perhaps the question is indiscreet?
Questions are never indiscreet. Answers sometimes are.
Well, may I at least know if it is for politics or pleasure?
Politics are my only pleasure. You see, nowadays it is not fashionable for one to flirt until one is 40, to be romantic until one is 45. So that leaves us poor women who are under 30, or claim to be so. With nothing left to us but politics or philanthropy. And philanthropy seems to me to be the refuge of those who wish to annoy their fellow creatures. I prefer politics. I find they are more becoming.
A political life is a noble career.
Sometimes. And sometimes it is a clever game. Still other times, a great nuisance.
And which do you find it?
A combination of all three.
Allow me.
Thank you.
And now, you have not yet told me what makes you come to London so suddenly. Our season is nearly over.
I don't care for the London season. It is far too matrimonial. People are either hunting for husbands or hiding from them. I wanted to meet you. It's quite true. You know what a woman's curiosity is. Almost as great as a man's. I wanted immensely to meet you. To ask you to do something for me.
Well, I hope it's not a little thing, Mrs. Chiltern. I find that little things are so very difficult to do.
I don't think it is quite a little thing.
I'm so glad. Do tell me what it is.
Later on. And now may I walk through your wonderful house. I hear you have some charming pictures. Poor Baron Arnheim. You remember the Baron? He used to tell me you had some wonderful Corrots.
Did you know Baron Arnheim well?
Intimately. Did you?
At one time.
Wonderful man, wasn't he?
He was very remarkable in many ways.
I often think it's such a pity that he never wrote his memoirs. It would have been most interesting.
Yes, he did know men in cities well, like the old Greek.
Without the dreadful disadvantage of having a Penelope waiting at home for him.
Lord Goring.
Good evening, Arthur. Mrs. Chiltern, allow me to introduce you to Lord Goring, the idlest man in London.
I haven't met Lord Goring before.
I did not think you would remember me, Mrs. Chiltern.
My memory is under admirable control. And are you still a bachelor?
I believe so.
How very romantic.
Oh, I am not at all romantic. I am not old enough. I leave romance to my seniors.
Lord Goring is the result of the Boodles Club, Mrs. Chiltern.
He reflects every credit on the institution.
May I ask, are you staying in London long?
No,
That depends partly on the weather, partly on the cooking, and partly on Sir Robert.
You're not going to plunge us into a European war, I hope.
There is no danger at present.
You are very late.
Have you missed me?
Awfully.
Then I'm sorry I did not stay away longer. I like being missed.
How very selfish of you.
I am very selfish.
Lord Gordon, you are always telling me of your bad qualities.
I've only told you half of them as yet, Miss Mabel.
Are the others very bad?
Quite dreadful. When I think of them at night, I go to sleep at once.
Well, I delight in your bad qualities. I wouldn't have you part with one of them.
Oh, how very nice of you. But then, you are very nice. But, by the way, who brought that Mrs. Cheveley here, that woman in red who just left the room with your brother?
I think Lady Markby brought her. Why do you ask?
I haven't seen her for years. That is all.
What an absurd reason.
All reasons are absurd.
What sort of a woman is she?
Oh, a genius in the daytime and a beauty at night.
I dislike her already.
That shows your admirable good taste.
Oh. The English lady is the dragon of good things. Is she not? Quite the dragon of good things.
So the newspapers are always telling us.
I love to read your English newspapers. I find them so amusing.
Then, my dear Jacques, you must certainly learn to read between the lines.
I should like to, but my professor objects. May I have the pleasure of escorting you to the music room, mademoiselle?
Delighted, Viscount, delighted. Aren't you going to the music room?
Not if there's any music going on, Miss Mabel.
The music is in German. You would not understand.
Well, sir, what are you doing here? Wasting your life as usual? You should be in bed, sir. You keep too late hours. I heard of you dancing at Lady Rufford's till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Only 3:45, Father.
Can't make out how you stand London society. Lot of damn nobodies talking about nothing.
Oh, what? I love talking about nothing, Father. It's the only thing I know anything about.
You seem to me to be living entirely for pleasure.
What else is there to live for, Father? Nothing ages quite like happiness.
You are heartless, sir. Very heartless.
I hope not, Father. Good evening, Lady Castleton.
Are you here? I had no idea you ever came to political parties.
But I adore political parties. Why, they are the only place left to us when people don't talk politics.
I delight in talking politics. I talk them all day long, but I can't bear listening to them. I don't know how the unfortunate men in the House stand these long debates.
By never listening.
Really?
Of course. You see, it is a very dangerous thing to listen. If one listens, then one may be convinced. And a man who allows himself to be convinced by an argument is a thoroughly unreasonable person.
That accounts for so much in men that we have never understood.
There's so much in women that their husbands never appreciate in them.
Our husbands never appreciate anything in us. We always have to go to others for that.
Yes, always to others, have we not?
And those are the views of the two ladies who are known to have the most admirable husbands in London.
But that is exactly what we can't stand. My Reginald is quite hopelessly faultless. He is really unendurably so at times. There was not the smallest element of excitement in knowing him.
How terrible. Really, the thing should be more widely known.
Castleton is quite as bad. He is as domestic as if he were a bachelor.
Oh, my poor Olivia. We have married perfect husbands. And we are well punished for it.
I should have thought it was the husbands who were punished.
Oh dear, no. They are as happy as possible. And as for trusting us, well, it is tragic how much they trust us.
Perfectly tragic.
Or comic, Lady Bastleton?
Certainly not comic, Lord Goring. How unkind of you to suggest such a thing.
I am afraid Lord Goring is in the camp of the enemy, as usual. I saw him talking to that Mrs. Cheveley as he came in.
Handsome woman, Mrs. Cheveley.
Please, don't praise other women in our presence. You might wait for us to do that.
I did wait.
Well, we are not going to praise her. I hear that she went to the opera on Monday night and told Tommy Rupert at supper that, as far as she could see, London society was entirely made up of dowdies and dandies.
She's quite right, too. The men are all dowdies and the women are all dandies, aren't they?
Oh. Do you really think that's what Mrs. Cheveley meant?
Of course. And a very sensible remark for Mrs. Cheveley to make, too.
Why are you all talking about Mrs. Cheveley? Everybody is talking about Mrs. Cheveley. Lord Goring says, what did you say, Lord Goring? Oh, I remember. That she was a genius in the daytime and a beauty at night.
What a horrid combination. So very unnatural.
I like looking at geniuses and listening to beautiful people.
Oh, that is morbid of you, Mrs. Martin.
I am so glad to hear you say that. Marchmont and I have been married for 7 years, and he has never once told me that I was morbid. Men are so painfully unobservant.
But, dear Margaret, I have always said that you were the most morbid person in London.
Ah, but you were always sympathetic, Olivia.
Is it morbid to have a desire for food? I have a great desire for food. Lord Goring, will you give me some supper?
Oh, with pleasure, Miss Mabel.
How horrid you have been. You have never talked to me the whole evening.
How could I? You went away with the child diplomatist.
You might have followed us. Pursuit would have been only polite. I don't think I like you at all this evening.
I like you immensely.
I wish you'd show it in a more marked way.
Olivia, I have a curious feeling of absolute faintness. I think I should like some supper at once. I know I should like some supper.
I am positively dying for supper.
You know, men are so selfish. They never think of these things.
Men are grossly material. Grossly material.
May I have the honor of escorting you down to supper, Comtesse?
I never take supper. Thank you. But I will go down with you with pleasure.
I am so fond of eating. I am very English in all my tastes.
Quite English, quite.
Oh.
And are you visiting any of our country houses before leaving England?
No, I can't stand your English house parties. In England, people are always trying to be brilliant before breakfast. Only dull people are brilliant before breakfast. My stay in England really depends on you, Sir Robert.
Seriously?
Quite seriously. I'd like to interest you in this great political and financial scheme. This Argentine Canal Company, in fact.
It's a tedious and practical subject for you to speak of.
I quite like tedious, practical subjects, but I don't like our tedious, practical people. There's a wide difference. Besides, you are interested, I know, in international canal schemes. You were Lord Radley's secretary, weren't you, when the government purchased the Suez Canal shares?
Well, yes. But the Suez Canal was a very great and splendid undertaking. It gave us our direct route to India. It had imperial value. It was absolutely necessary that we should have control. This Argentine Canal scheme is nothing more than a commonplace stock exchange swindle.
A speculation, Sir Robert. A brilliant, daring speculation.
No, believe me, Mrs. Cheveley, it is a swindle. Let us call things by their proper names. It makes matters simpler. We have all the information at the Foreign Office. In fact, I sent a special commission to look into the matter privately, and they report that the work is hardly begun. And as for the money already subscribed, no one seems to know what has become of it. The whole thing is a second Panama, and without a quarter chance success that miserable affair ever had. I do hope you haven't invested in it, although I'm sure you're far too clever to have done something like that.
I have invested very largely in it.
Well, I could have advised you to do such a foolish thing.
Your old friend, and mine.
Who?
Baron Arnheim.
Ah, yes. I seem to recall at the time of his death that he had become mixed up in that whole affair.
It was his last romance. His last but one, to do him justice.
But you have not yet seen my Corot's. They're in the music room. Corot's pair well with music, don't you think? Might I show them to you?
I'm not in the mood tonight for silver twilights or rose pink times. I want to talk business.
I'm afraid I have very little advice to give you, Mrs. Cheveley, except to interest yourself in something less dangerous. The success of the canal depends, of course, on the attitude of England. I'm going to lay the report of the commission before the House tomorrow night.
That you must not do. For your own interest, Sir Robert, to say nothing of mine, you must not do that.
My own interests? My dear Mrs. Cheveley, what do you mean?
I will be quite frank with you. I want you to withdraw the report that you intend to lay before the House tomorrow night, on the ground that you have reason to believe the commissioner has been fraudulent or misinformed or something. And then I want you to say a few words to the effect that the government is going to reconsider the question. And you have reason to believe that the canal, if completed, will result of great international value. You know the sorts of things ministers say in cases like these. Few ordinary platitudes ought to do. In the modern world, there is nothing that produces such an effect as a good platitude. It makes the whole world king. Will you do that for me?
Mrs. Cheveley, you cannot be serious in making me such a proposal.
I'm quite serious.
Pray allow me to believe that you are not.
But I am. And if you do as I ask, I will pay you very handsomely.
Pay me?
Yes.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean.
How very disappointing. Now I've come all the way from Vienna, but you may thoroughly understand me.
I fear that I don't.
Sir Robert, you are a man of the world. And you have your price, I suppose. Nowadays, everyone has. Your drawbacks, and most people are so dreadfully expensive. I know I am. I hope you will be more reasonable in your terms.
If you will allow me, Mrs. Cheveley, I shall call for your carriage. In your long time living abroad, you seem to be unable to realize that you are speaking with an English gentleman.
I realize that I am speaking to a man who laid the foundation of his fortune by selling to a stock exchange speculator a cabinet secret.
What do you mean?
I mean, I know the real origin of your wealthy career. And I got your letter, too.
What letter?
The letter you wrote to Baron Arnheim when you were Lord Radley's secretary, telling the Baron to purchase the Suez Canal shows. A letter written 3 days before the government announced its own purchase.
It's not true.
You thought that letter had been destroyed. How foolish of you. It's in my possession.
The affair to which you allude was nothing more than a speculation. The government had not yet passed the bill. It might have been rejected.
It was a swindle, Sir Robert. Let us call things by their proper names. It makes everything so much simpler. And now I'm prepared to sell you that letter. And the price I ask for it is your public support in this Argentine scheme. You made your fortune out of one now. You must help me and my friends make our fortune out of another.
It's infamous what you ask of me. Infamous.
It is the game of life, as we all must play it. Sooner or later.
I cannot do what you ask of me.
You mean you cannot help but do it? Sir Robert, you are standing on the edge of a precipice. And it is not for you to make terms. It is for you to accept them. Supposing you refuse.
What then?
My dear Sir Robert, what's that? Well, you are ruined. That is all. Remember what your Puritanism in England has brought you to. In the old days, no one used to think of themselves a bit better than one's neighbor. In fact, to be a bit better than one's neighbor was to be considered excessively vulgar and middle class. Scandals used to leave charm to a man, at least interest. Now they crush him. And yours is a very nasty scandal. You cannot survive it. If it were known that as a young man, secretary to a great and important minister, you sold a cabinet secret for a large sum of money, and that was the origin of your wealthy career. You would be hounded out of public life. You would disappear completely. And after all, Sir Robert, why should you sacrifice your entire future rather than deal diplomatically with your enemy? Years ago, you did a clever, unscrupulous thing, and it turned out a great success. You owe to it your fortune and position. And now you've got to pay. Sooner or later, we've all got to pay for what we do, and you have to pay now. Before I leave tonight, you must promise me to support my scheme and speak in the House in favor of it.
What you ask is impossible.
You're going to make it possible. You must make it possible. Sir Robert, you know as your English newspapers are like. Supposing that when I leave this house, I go down to the nearest newspaper office, and of this scandal, and the proofs of it. Think of their loathsome joy. Think of their delight they would have in dragging you down, the mud and the mire they would plunge
Stop.
you into.
You want me to withdraw my report and make a short speech saying that I see possibilities in this scheme?
Those are my terms.
I will offer you any sum of money that you want.
Even you are not rich enough, Sir Robert, to buy back your past. No man is.
I will not do what you ask.
You must. If you don't,
Oh, wait. What did you say? You said that you would give me back my letter?
yeah, that is agreed. I will be in the ladies' gallery tomorrow evening at 11:30. If by then you will have had heaps of opportunity, you have spoken in the House in the terms that I wish, I will hand you back your letter with the prettiest thanks, and the best, or most suitable, compliment I can think of. I intend to play quite fairly with you. Indeed, one should always play fairly when one has the winning cards. The Baron taught me that, amongst other things.
You must give me some time to consider your proposal.
No, you must settle now.
Give me a week. Just 3 days.
Impossible. I have to telegraph to Vienna tonight.
God, what has brought you into my life?
Circumstances.
I don't know. I consent. The report will be withdrawn. I'll arrange for a question to be put me on the subject.
Thank you. I knew we would come to an amicable agreement. And now you may get my carriage for me. I hear the English are coming up from supper, and Englishmen are always getting romantic after meal. It bores me dreadfully.
Well, Mrs. Cheever, I hope you have enjoyed yourself. Sir Robert is very entertaining, is he not?
Most entertaining. I enjoyed my talk with him immensely.
He has had a very interesting and brilliant career, and he has married a most admirable wife. Lady Chiltern is a woman of the very highest principles, I'm glad to say. I'm a little too old now myself to trouble about setting a good example, but I always admire people who do. And Gertrude Chiltern has a very ennobling effect on life. Our dinner parties are rather dull sometimes. One can't have everything, can one? And now I must go. Shall I call you tomorrow, dear?
Thank you.
We might drive in the park at 5. Everything looks so fresh in the park now.
Except the people.
Perhaps the people are a little jaded. I have often observed that the season as it goes on produces a kind of softening of the brain. However, I think anything is better than high intellectual pressure. That is the most unbecoming thing there is. It makes the noses of the young girls so particularly large. There is nothing so difficult to marry as a large nose. Men don't like them.
What a charming house you have, Lady Chiltern. I have spent a delightful evening. It has been most interesting getting to know your husband.
Why did you wish to meet my husband, Mrs. Cheever?
Oh, I will tell you. I wanted to interest him in this Argentine canal company, of which you've heard of, I dare say. I found him most susceptible. Susceptible to reason, that is. A rare thing in a man. I converted him in 10 minutes. He is going to make a speech in the House tomorrow night in favor of the scheme. We must go to the ladies' gallery to hear him. It will be a great occasion.
There must be some mistake. That scheme could never have my husband's support.
I assure you it's all settled. I don't regret my tedious journey from Vienna at all now. It's been a great success. But of course, for the next 24 hours, the whole thing is a dead secret.
A secret? Between whom?
Between your husband and myself.
Your carriage is ready, Mrs. Chiltern.
Thank you. Good evening, Lady Chiltern. Good night, Lord Goring. I'm staying at Claridge's. Might you leave a card?
If you wish it, Mrs. Cheegley.
Don't sound so solid about it, or I shall have to leave a card on you. In England, I suppose that would hardly be considered proper. Abroad, we are more civilized. Will you see me down, Sir Robert? Now that we have the same interest at heart, I hope we shall be great friends.
What a horrid woman.
You should go to bed, Miss Mabel.
Lord Goring.
My father told me to go to bed an hour ago, and I don't see why I shouldn't give you the same advice. I always pass on good advice. It is the only thing to do with it. It is never of any use to oneself.
Lord Goring, you are always ordering me out of the room. I think it most courageous of you, especially as I am not going to bed for hours. Now you can come and sit down if you like, and talk about anything in the world, except the Royal Academy, Mrs. Cheegley, or novels in Scotch dialect. They are not improving subjects. Oh, what's this? Someone has dropped a diamond brooch. Oh, quite beautiful, isn't it? I wish it were mine, but Gertrude won't let me have anything but pearls, and I am thoroughly sick of pearls. They make one look so good, so plain, so intellectual. I wonder who the brooch belongs to.
I wonder who dropped it.
It is a beautiful brooch.
It is a handsome bracelet.
It's not a bracelet, it's a brooch.
It can be used as a bracelet.
Well, what are you doing?
Miss Mabel, I'm going to make a rather strange request to you.
Oh, pray do. I've been waiting for it all the evening.
Don't tell anyone that I've taken charge of this brooch. Should anyone write and claim it, let me know at once.
That is a strange request.
Well, you see, I gave this brooch to someone once, years ago.
You did?
Yes.
Then I shall certainly bid you good night. Good night, Gertrude.
Good night, dear. You saw who Lady Markby brought here tonight.
Oh, yes. What a horrible surprise. But for what reason would she want to come here?
Well, apparently to try and lure Robert to uphold some fraudulent scheme in which she's interested in. The Argentine Canal, in fact.
She has mistaken her man, hasn't she?
She is incapable of understanding an upright nature like my husband's.
Yes, I should fancy she came to grief if she tried to get Robert into her toils. It is astounding what extraordinary mistakes clever women make.
Oh, I don't call women of that kind clever. I call them stupid.
Same thing, often. Goodbye, Lady Chiltern.
Oh, Arthur, you're not going, are you? Do stop a while.
Afraid I can't, thanks. I've promised to look in at the Hard Rocks. I believe they've got a mauve Hungarian band playing mauve Hungarian music.
How beautiful you are tonight, Gertrude.
Robert, it is not true, is it? You're not going to lend your support to this Argentine speculation. You couldn't.
Who told you that I intended to do so?
That woman who has just gone out, Mrs. Cheegley as she calls herself now, she seemed to taunt me with it. Robert, I know this woman, you don't. We were at school together. She was untruthful, dishonest, an evil influence on everyone whose trust or friendship she could win. I hated, I despised her. She stole things. She was a thief. She was sent away for being a thief. Why would you let her influence you?
Well, Gertrude, what you tell me may be true, but it happened many years ago, and it's best forgotten. Mrs. Cheegley may have changed since then. No one should be entirely judged by their past.
One's past is what one is, Robert. It is the only way by which people should be judged.
That is a hard saying, Gertrude.
That is a true saying, Robert. And what did she mean by boasting that she had got you to lend your name, your support, to a thing I've heard you describe as the most dishonest and fraudulent scheme there's ever been in political life.
I was mistaken in the view that I took. We all might make mistakes.
But you told me yesterday that you had received the report from the commission and that it entirely condemned the whole thing.
I have reason now to believe that that commission was prejudiced, or at any rate misinformed. Besides, Gertrude, public and private life are different things. They have different laws, and they move on different lines.
They should both represent man at his highest. I see no difference between them.
In the present case, in a matter of practical politics, I have changed my mind, that is all.
All?
Yes.
Oh, Robert, I hate that I have to ask this of you. Robert, are you telling me the full truth?
Why do you ask me such a question?
Why do you not answer it?
Gertrude, the truth is a very complex thing, and politics is a very complex business. There are wheels within wheels. One may be under obligations to others that one has to pay. Sooner or later in political life, one has to compromise. Everyone does.
Compromise? Oh, Robert, why do you talk so differently tonight from the way I've always heard you talk? Why are you changed?
I'm not changed. But circumstances alter things.
Circumstances should never alter principles.
But if I told you
What?
that it was necessary, vitally necessary,
It can never be necessary to do what is not honorable. Or if it be necessary, then what is it that I have loved? But tell me it is not, Robert. Tell me it is not. Why should it be? What gain would you get? Money? We have no need for that. And money that comes from a tainted source is a degradation. Power? But power is nothing in itself. It is the power to do good that is fine. That and that only. What is it then? Robert, tell me why you're going to do this dishonorable thing.
Gertrude, you have no right to use that word. I've told you that it is a matter of practical compromise. It is no more than that.
That is all very good for other men, Robert, but not for you, not for you. You are different. All your life you have stood apart from others. You've never let the world soil you. To the world, as to myself, you've been an ideal always. Oh, be that ideal still. Don't kill my love for you. Don't kill that. I know there are men who have done horrible things in their lives. Men who have done some shameful thing and who in some critical moment have to pay for it by doing some other act of shame. But don't tell me you are such as they are. Robert, is there in your life any secret dishonor or disgrace? Tell me at once that
what?
That our lives may drift apart.
Drift apart?
That they may be entirely separate. It would be better for us both.
Gertrude, there's nothing in my past life that you might not know.
I was sure of it, Robert. I was sure of it. Why did you say those dreadful things? Things so unlike your real self. Don't let us talk of the subject ever again. You will write to Mrs. Cheveley, won't you? And tell her that you cannot support this scandalous scheme of hers. If you've given her any promise, you must take it back, and that is all.
Must I write to her and tell her that?
Surely, Robert. What else is there to do?
I might see her in person. It would be better.
No. You must never see her again. You must never speak to her again. She's not a woman worthy to talk to a man like you. No. You must write to her, now, this moment, and let your letter show her that your decision is quite irrevocable.
Right, this moment?
Yes.
But it's so late. It's close on 12.
That makes no matter. She must know she's been mistaken in you. That you're not a man to do anything that is base or underhand or dishonest. Here. Right here. Write that you decline to support this scheme of hers, as you hold it to be a dishonest scheme. Yes, write the word dishonest. She knows what that word means. Yes, this will do. And now the envelope. Have this letter sent at once to Claridge's Hotel. There is no answer. Robert, love gives one an instinct to things. I feel tonight as if I saved you from something that might have been a danger to you, from something that might have made men honor you less than they already do. Don't think you realize sufficiently, Robert, that you've brought into the political life of our time a nobler atmosphere, a finer attitude towards life, a freer air of purer aims and higher ideals. I know it, and for that I love you, Robert.
Love me always, Gertrude. Love me always.
I will love you always. You will always be worthy of love. We needs must love the highest when we see it.
Put out the lights, Mason. Put out the lights.
My dear Robert, it's a very awkward business. Very awkward indeed. You should have told your wife the whole thing. Secrets from other people's wives are a necessary luxury in modern life. So at least I'm always told at the club by those bald enough to know better. But no man should have any secret from his own wife. She invariably finds it out. Women have a wonderful instinct about things. They can discover everything except the obvious.
When did I have told you? Not last night. It would have made a lifelong separation between us. And I would have lost the love of the one woman in the world whom I worship. Of the only woman who has ever sparked love with me. No, last night would have been quite impossible. She would have turned from me in horror. Horror and in contempt.
Is Lady Chiltern as perfect as all that?
Yes. My wife is as perfect as all that.
What a pity. I beg your pardon, my dear fellow. I didn't quite mean that. But if what you tell me is true, then I should like to have a serious talk about life with Lady Chiltern.
It would be of no use.
Well, may I try?
Yes, but nothing can make her alter her views.
Well, I am bound to say that I think you should have told her the whole thing years ago.
When? When we were engaged? Do you think that she would have married me if she had known that the basis of my career is such as it is? That the origin of my fortune is such as it is? And that I had done a thing that I suppose most men would call shameful and dishonorable?
Yes, most men would call it ugly names. There is no doubt of that.
Men who each one of them have done worse things in their own lives. Men who every day do something of the like themselves.
And that is why they're so pleased to discover other people's secrets and distract public attention from their own.
And after all, whom did I wrong by what I did? No one.
Except yourself, Robert.
Of course, I had certain private information contemplated by the government of the day, and I acted on it. Private information is practically the source of every modern large fortune.
And public scandal, invariably the result.
Arthur, do you think that what I did nearly 18 years ago should be brought up against me now? Do you think it's right that a man's whole career should be ruined for a thing done in his boyhood almost? I was 22 at the time, and I had the double misfortune of being well-born and poor, two unforgivable things in today's society. Is it fair that the folly, the sin of one's youth, if men choose to call it a sin, should wreck a life like mine, should ruin all that I have worked for, all that I have built up? Is that fair, Arthur?
Life is never fair, Robert, and perhaps it's a good thing for most of us that it is not.
Every man of ambition must fight the century with its own weapons. What this century worships is wealth. The god of this century is wealth. To succeed, one must have wealth. At all costs, one must have wealth.
You underrate yourself, Robert. Believe me, without wealth, you could have done just as well.
When I was old, perhaps. When I had lost my passion for power, could no longer use it. When I was tired, worn down, disappointed. No, I wanted my success when I was young. Youth is the time for success. I could not wait.
But you have had your success, and while you are still young, no one in our day has had such a brilliant success. Under-Secretary for Foreign Affairs at 40. That's good enough for anyone, I should think.
If it's all taken away from me now, if I lose everything over this horrible scandal, if I'm hounded from public life.
Oh, Robert, How could you have sold yourself for money?
I did not sell myself for money. I bought success at a great price, that is all.
Yes, you certainly have paid a great price for it. But what first made you think of doing such a thing?
Baron.
Damn scoundrel!
No. He was a man of a most subtle and refined intellect. A man of culture, charm, and distinction. One of the most intellectual men I've ever met.
I prefer a gentlemanly fool any day. There is more to be said for stupidity than most people imagine. Personally, I have a great admiration for stupidity. It is a sort of fellow feeling, I suppose. But how did he do it? Tell me the whole thing.
One night, after dinner at Lord Radley's, the Baron began talking to us of success in modern life as something that could be reduced to an exact science. In that wonderfully fascinating, quiet voice of his, he expounded to us the most terrible of philosophies, the philosophy of power. Preached to us the most wonderful of gospels, the gospel of gold. I think that he saw the effect that it produced on me, for some days later he wrote to me and asked me to visit him. I still remember how he awed me with the strange luxuries in which he lived, and then told me that luxury was nothing more than a backdrop, a painted picture in a play, and that power over other men, power over the world was the one thing worth having, the one luxury worth pursuing, the one joy never tired of. And now in our century, only the rich possessed it.
A thoroughly shallow creed.
I didn't think so then. And I don't think so now. Now, wealth gave me enormous power. It gave me at the very outset of my life freedom. And freedom is everything. You've never been poor, Arthur. You can't understand what ambition is. You can never understand what a wonderful chance the Baron gave me. A chance that few men get.
Fortunately for them, if one is to judge by results. But how did the Baron finally persuade you to, well, to do what you did?
As I was leaving him, the Baron told me that if ever I could give him any private information of real value, it would make me a very rich man. I was dazed by the prospect he set before me. My ambition for power was at the time boundless. 6 weeks later, certain documents passed through my hands.
State documents?
Yes.
I had no idea that you, of all men in the world, could have been so weak, Robert, as to yield to the kind of temptation that Baron Arnheim held out to you.
I'm sick of hearing that word, sick of using it against others. Arthur, do you really think that it is weakness that yields to temptation? I tell you that there are terrible temptations that require strength and courage to yield to risk everything on a single moment, to stake one's whole life on one throw, whether that stake be power or pleasure, I care not. There's no weakness in that. There's a terrible, horrible courage. And I had that courage. I sat down that same afternoon and I wrote the Baron the letter that this woman now holds. He made $750,000 over the transaction.
And you?
I received from the Baron £110,000.
Oh, you were worth more, Robert.
No. And that money gave me exactly what I wanted. I went into the house immediately. The Baron advised me on matters of finance from time to time. In 4 or 5 years, I had nearly tripled my fortune. Since then, everything I have touched has turned out a success. In matters of money, I have had a success so great that it almost makes me afraid. I remember reading in some book that when the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers.
But did you never suffer any regret for what you had done?
No. I felt that I had fought the century with its own weapons and won.
You thought you had won.
I thought so. Arthur, do you despise me for what I've told you?
I am very sorry for you, Robert. Very sorry indeed. As regards this dreadful business, I will help you in whatever way I can. Of course you know that.
Thank you, Arthur. But what can I do? What can be done?
Well, the English can't stand a man who is always saying he's in the right. But they are very fond of a man who admits he's been in the wrong. It is one of the very best things in them. But in your case, Robert, a confession would not do. The money, if you will allow me to say so, is awkward. Besides, if you did make a clean breast of the whole affair, you would never be able to talk morality again. And a man who can't talk morality twice a week to a large, popular, immoral audience is quite over as a politician. No, there would be nothing left for him as a profession except for botany. Or the church. No, confession would be of no use. It would ruin you.
It would ruin me. Arthur, I suppose the only thing to do now is to fight the thing out.
Oh, I was hoping you would say that, Robert. It is the only thing to do now, and you must begin by telling your wife the whole thing.
No, that I will never do.
Robert, believe me, you are wrong.
I couldn't do it. It would kill her love for me. And now about this Mrs. Cheveley, surely there must be something known against her. You knew her at one time, apparently.
Yes.
Well, did you know her well?
So little that I was engaged to be married to her once while I was staying at Tenby's. The whole affair lasted 3 days. Nearly.
Why was it broken off?
I don't remember. At least it makes no matter. By the way, have you tried her with money? She used to be confoundedly fond of money.
Any sum she wanted, she refused.
Then the marvelous gospel of gold breaks down sometimes, and the rich can't do everything after all.
Not everything. Oh, Arthur, I fear that you are right. I feel that public disgrace is in store for me. I've never known terror before. I know it now. It's as if a hand of ice were laid upon my heart. It's as if my heart were beating itself to death in some lonely hall.
Robert, you must fight her. You must fight her.
But how?
Well, I can't tell you how at present. I have not the smallest idea. But there is in every nature some weakness. There is some flaw in every one of us. My father tells me that even I have faults. Perhaps I do, I don't know.
Arthur, in this fight against Mrs. Cheveley, I have a right to use every weapon at my disposal, do I not?
In your case, Robert, I shouldn't have the smallest scruple in doing so. Mrs. Cheveley is well able to take care of herself.
And I shall write a cipher telegram to our embassy at Vienna to inquire if anything is known about her. Perhaps there might be some scandal that she's afraid of.
Oh, I should fancy Mrs. Cheveley is one of those very modern women of our day who finds a scandal as becoming as a new bonnet and airs them both in the park every afternoon at 5:30. Yes, I am sure that Mrs. Cheveley simply adores scandals, and that the great sorrow of her life at present is that she can't manage to have enough of them.
What makes you say that?
Well, she wore far too much rouge last night, and not quite enough clothes. That is always a sign of despair in a woman.
But it is worth my writing to Vienna, is it not?
It is always worth asking the question, Robert, though it is not always worthwhile answering one.
Is Mr. Trafford in his room?
Yes, Sir Robert.
Have to send off in cipher at once to Vienna. There must not be a moment's delay.
Yes, Sir Robert.
She must have had some curious hold over Baron Ronheim. I wonder what it could have been.
I wonder.
I will fight her to the death. As long as my wife knows nothing.
Oh, fight in any case, Robert, in any case.
If my wife found out, there would be little left to fight for. But hush, I hear my wife's voice.
Good afternoon, Lord Goring.
Good afternoon, Lady Chiltern. Have you been in the park?
No, I have just come from the Women's Liberal Association, where, by the way, Robert, your name was received with a loud applause. And now I have come in to have my tea. You will wait and have some tea, won't you?
I'll wait a short time, thanks.
I'll be back in a moment. I'm only going to take my hat off.
Oh, please don't. It is a very pretty hat, one of the prettiest that I have ever seen. I hope that the Women's Liberal Association received it with loud applause.
We have much more important work than to look at each other's bonnets, Lord Gordon.
Really? What sort of work?
Dull, useful, delightful things. Factory acts, female inspectors, the 8 hours bill, the parliamentary franchise, everything, in fact, which you would find thoroughly uninteresting.
And never bonnets?
Never bonnets, never.
Been a good friend to me, Arthur. Thoroughly good friend.
Well, I'm not sure I've been able to do much for you as yet, Robert. In fact, I haven't done anything for you at all, as far as I can tell. I am thoroughly disappointed in myself.
Enabled me to tell the truth, and that's something.
The truth is a thing I get rid of as soon as possible. It makes one very unpopular at the club with the older members. They call it being conceited. Perhaps it is.
Oh, to God that I have been able to tell the truth. To live the truth. Oh, what a thing to live the truth. But I'll see you again soon, shan't I?
Of course, whenever you like. I'm going to look in at the bachelor's ball tonight, unless I find something better to do. But I'll come round again tomorrow for a visit. If you should want me tonight by any chance, send round a note to Curzon Street.
Thank you, Arthur.
Oh, you're not going, Robert.
I'll have some letters to write you.
Robert, you work too hard. You seem never to think of yourself, and you're always looking so tired.
It's nothing, my dear. It's nothing.
Do sit down. I'm so glad you have called. I want to talk to you about, well, not about bonnets or the Women's Liberal Association. You take far too much interest in the first subject and not nearly enough in the second.
You want to talk to me about Mrs. Cheveley?
Yes, you have guessed it. After you left last night, I found out what she had said was really true. Of course, I made Robert write her a letter at once, withdrawing his promise.
So he gave me to understand.
To have kept it would have been the first stain on a career that's been stainless, always. Robert must be above reproach. He's not like other men. He cannot afford to do what other men do. Well, don't you agree with me? You are Robert's greatest friend. You are our greatest friend, Lord Gordon. No one, except myself, knows Robert better than you do. He has no secrets from me, and I don't think he has any from you.
He certainly has no secrets from me. I don't think so.
Then am I not right in my estimate of him? But I know I'm right. Speak to me frankly.
Quite frankly?
Well, surely, you have nothing to conceal, have you?
Nothing. But my dear Lady Chiltern, I have sometimes thought that in practical life,
Of which you know so little, Lord Gordon.
of which I know nothing by experience, though I know something by observation. In practical life, there is something about success, actual success, that is a little unscrupulous. Once a man has set his heart and soul on getting to a certain point, if he has to climb the crag, he climbs the crag. And if he has to walk in the mire, well, then he walks in the mire. Of course, I am only speaking generally about life.
Well, I hope so. Why do you look at me so strangely, Lord Gordon?
My dear Lady Chiltern, I have sometimes thought that perhaps you have been a little hard in some of your views on life, that you have not made sufficient allowances. There is in every nature some element of weakness, or worse than weakness. Supposing that any public man, my father, or Lord Merton, or Robert, say, had years ago written some letter to someone.
What do you mean by a foolish letter?
A letter gravely compromising one's position. I'm only, of course, putting an imaginary case.
Robert is as incapable of doing a foolish thing as he is of doing a wrong thing.
Nobody is incapable of doing a foolish thing. And nobody is incapable of doing a wrong thing.
Are you a pessimist? What will the other dandies say? We will all have to go into mourning.
No, Lady Chiltern, I'm not a pessimist. Indeed, I'm not sure that I quite know what pessimism really means. All I do know is that life cannot be lived without much charity, cannot be understood without much charity. It is love, and not German philosophy, that is the real explanation of this world, whatever may be the explanation of the next. And if you should ever be in trouble, Lady Chiltern, trust me absolutely, and I will help you in whatever way I can. If you should want me, come to me for my assistance, and you shall have it. Come at once to me.
Lord Goring, you are talking quite seriously. Well, I don't think I've ever heard you talk seriously before.
You must forgive me, Lady Chiltern. It won't occur again if I can help it.
I'd like you to be serious.
Dear Gertrude, don't say such a thing to Lord Goring. Seriousness would be very unbecoming to him. Good afternoon, Lord Goring. Pray, be as trivial as you can.
I should like to, Miss Mabel, but I'm afraid I'm a little out of practice this morning. And besides, I've really got to be going.
And just when I've come in, what dreadful manners you have. I am sure you were very badly brought up.
I was.
I wish I had brought you up.
I'm so sorry you didn't.
It's too late now, I suppose.
I'm not quite sure.
Will you ride tomorrow morning?
Yes, at 10.
Don't forget.
Of course I shan't. And by the way, Lady Chiltern, there appears to have been no list of your guests in the Morning Post of today. Apparently, it has been crowded out by the County Council, or the Lambeth Conference, or something equally boring. Could you let me have a list? I have a particular reason for asking you.
I'm sure Mr. Trafford will be able to give you one.
Thanks so much.
Tommy is the most useful person in London.
And who is the most ornamental?
I am.
How clever of you to guess it. Goodbye, Lady Chiltern. You will remember what I said to you, won't you?
Yes, although I don't know why you said it to me.
I hardly know myself. Goodbye, Miss Mabel.
Oh, I wish you were not going. I've had 4 wonderful adventures this morning. 4.5, in fact. You might stop and listen to some of them.
How very selfish of you to have had 4.5. There won't be any left for me.
I don't want you to have any. They would not be good for you.
That is the first unkind thing you have ever said to me. But how cleverly you said it. Time tomorrow?
Sharp.
Quite sharp. But don't bring Mr. Trafford.
Of course I shan't bring Tommy Trafford. Tommy Trafford is in great disgrace.
I am delighted to hear it.
Gertrude, I wish you would speak with Tommy Trafford.
What has poor Mr. Trafford done this time? Robin says he's the best secretary he's ever had.
Well, Tommy has proposed to me. Again. Tommy really does nothing but propose to me. He proposed to me last night in the music room when I was quite unprotected, and as there was an elaborate trio going on, I didn't dare make the smallest repartee. Then he proposed to me in broad daylight this morning under that dreadful statue of Achilles. Really, the things that go on in front of that work of art are quite appalling. The police ought to interfere. At luncheon, I saw by the gleam in his eye that he was going to propose to me again. And I just managed to check him in time by assuring him that I was a bimetallist. Fortunately, I don't know what bimetallism means, and I don't believe anybody else does either. But the observation crushed Tommy for 10 minutes. He looked quite shocked. And then Tommy is so annoying in the way he proposes. If he proposed at the top of his voice, I should not mind so much. That might have some effect on the public. But he does it in this horrible, confidential way. When Tommy wants to be romantic, he talks to one just like a doctor. I am very fond fond of Tommy, but his methods of proposing are quite out of date. I wish, Gertrude, that you would speak with him and tell him that once a week is often enough to propose to anyone. And it should always be done in a manner that attracts some attention.
Dear Mabel, you mustn't talk like that. Robert thinks very highly of Mr. Trafford, and he believes he has a brilliant future before him.
Oh, I wouldn't marry a man with a future before him for anything under the sun.
Mabel.
I know, dear. You married a man with a future before him, didn't you? But then, Robert was a genius, and you have a noble, self-sacrificing character. You can stand geniuses. I have no character at all. And Robert was the only genius I could ever bear. As a rule, I think they are quite impossible. Geniuses talk so much, don't they? Such a bad habit. And then, they are always thinking about themselves when I want them to be thinking about me. I must go round now and rehearse at Lady Basildon's. You remember we are having tableau, don't you? The triumph of something. I don't know what. Hope it will be triumph of me. Only triumph I'm really interested in at present. Goodbye, dear. Oh, Gertrude, do you know who's coming in to see you? That dreadful Mrs. Cheveley in a most lovely gown. Did you ask her?
Mrs. Cheveley, coming to see me? Impossible.
I assure you, she is coming up the stairs as large as life and not nearly so natural.
You mustn't wait, Mabel. Remember, Lady Basildon is expecting you.
Oh, yes.
Lady Markby, Mrs. Cheveley.
Dear Lady Markby, how kind of you to come and see me. Won't you sit down, Mrs. Cheveley? Thank you.
Dear Gertrude, we've just called to know if Mrs. Cheveley's diamond brooch has been found.
Here? Yes. I lost it last night when I got back to Claridge's. I thought I may have dropped it here.
I have heard nothing about it, but I will send for the butler and ask.
Pray don't trouble Lady Chiltern. I'm sure I lost it at the opera before I came here.
Ah, yes. I suppose it must have been at the opera. The fact is, we all scramble and jostle so much nowadays, and I wonder we have anything at all left on us at the end of an evening. I know myself that as I'm coming back from the drawing room, I always feel as if I haven't a shred on me, except a small shred of decent reputation. Just enough to prevent the lower classes from making painful observations through the windows of the carriage. The fact is, our society is terribly overpopulated. Really, someone ought to arrange a proper scheme of assisted immigration. It would do a great deal of good.
I quite agree with you, Lady Markby. It's been nearly 6 years since I've been in London for the season, and I must say society has become dreadfully mixed. One sees the oddest people everywhere.
That is very true, dear. But what do you know them? I'm sure I don't know half of the people who come to my house, and from all I hear, I shouldn't like to.
What sort of a brooch was it that you lost, Mrs. Cheveley?
A diamond snake brooch with a ruby. A rather large ruby.
I thought you said there was a sapphire on the head, dear.
No, Lady Markby. A ruby.
Very becoming, I'm quite sure.
Has a ruby and diamond snake brooch been found in any of the rooms this morning, Mason?
No, milady.
It really is of no consequence, Lady Chiltern. I'm so sorry to have put you at any inconvenience.
Oh, it is of no inconvenience. That will do, Mason. You can bring tea.
Well, I must say it is most annoying to lose anything. I remember once, years ago, losing in the pump room an exceedingly handsome cameo bracelet that Sir John had given me. I don't think he has given me anything since, I'm sorry. He has sadly degenerated. Really, this horrible House of Commons, it ruins our husbands for us. I think the lower house by far the greatest blow to a happy married life that there has been since that terrible thing called the higher education of women was invented.
It is heresy to say that in this house, Lady Markby. Robert is a great champion of the higher education of women, and so, I am afraid, am I.
It is the higher education of men that I should like to see. Men need it so sadly.
They do, dear. But I'm afraid such a scheme would be quite impractical. I don't think man has much capacity for development. He's gone as far as he can, and that is not far, is it, dear? With regard to women, well, dear Gertrude, you belong to the younger generation, and I am sure it is all right if you approve of it. In my time, of course, we were taught not to understand anything. That was the old way of things, and wonderfully interesting it was. I assure you, the number of things I and my poor dear sister were taught not to understand is quite extraordinary. Modern women understand everything, I'm told.
Except their husbands. That is the one thing the modern woman never understands.
And a good thing too, dear. It might break up many a happy home if they did. Not yours, I need hardly say, Gertrude. You have married a passionate husband. I wish I could say as much for myself. Since Sir John has taken to attending the debates regularly, which he never used to do in the good old days, his temper has become quite impossible.
May I give you some tea, Mrs. Cheveley?
Thank you.
Some tea, Lady Markby.
Oh, no thanks, dear. The fact is, I promised to go around for 10 minutes to see poor Lady Brancaster, who is in very great trouble. Her own daughter, quite a well-brought-up girl too, has actually become engaged to be married to a curate in Shropshire. It is very sad indeed. You know Lady Brancaster, don't you, dear?
Yes, she was staying at Langton last autumn when we were there.
Well, like all stout women, she looks the very picture of happiness, as no doubt you noticed. There are many other tragedies in her life besides this unfortunate affair of the curate. Her own sister, Mrs. Jekyll, has had a most unhappy life. Through no fault of her own, I'm sorry to say. She ultimately was so broken-hearted that she went into the opera. Or into a convent, I forget which. It was decorative art needlework she took up. At any rate, I know she had lost all sense of pleasure in life. And now, Miss Go, dear, shall I leave Mrs. Cheveley with you and call back for her in a quarter of an hour, as I intended to be a visit of condolence, I shan't stay long. Or perhaps, dear Mrs. Cheveley, you wouldn't mind waiting in the carriage.
I don't mind waiting in the carriage at all.
Well, I hope Mrs. Cheveley will stay here a little. I should like to have a few minutes' conversation with her.
Very kind of you, Lady Chiltern. Believe me, nothing would give me greater pleasure.
Oh. No doubt you both have many pleasant reminiscences of your school days to talk over together. Shall I see you Lady Bonars tonight? She has discovered a wonderful new genius. He does nothing at all, I am told. That is a great comfort, is it not?
Robert and I are dining at home by ourselves tonight, and I don't think I shall go anywhere afterwards. Robert, of course, will have to be in the house, but there is nothing interesting going on.
Dining home? By yourselves? Is that quite prudent, dear? But I forget, your husband is an exception. Mine is the general rule, and there is nothing that ages a woman so rapidly as having married the general rule.
Wonderful woman, Lady Markby, isn't she? Talks more and says less than anyone I've ever met. She was made to be a public speaker, much more so than her husband, though he is a typical Englishman. Always dull, usually violent.
Mrs. Cheveley, I think it is right to tell you that, quite frankly, had I known who you really were, I should not have invited you to my house last night.
Really?
I could not have done so.
I see that after all these years, you have not changed a bit.
I never change.
Then life has taught you nothing.
It has taught me that a person who has once been guilty of a dishonest and dishonorable action may be guilty of it a second time and should be shunned.
Would you apply that rule to everyone?
Yes, to everyone, without exception.
Then I'm very sorry for you, Gertrude. Very sorry for you.
You see now that I was sure, for many reasons, Any further acquaintance between us during your stay in London is quite impossible.
You know, Gertrude, I don't mind you speaking morality a bit. Morality is simply the attitude we take on when speaking of people whom we personally dislike. You dislike me, I'm quite aware of that. And I have always detested you. Yet I have come here to do you a service.
Like the service you wished to render my husband last night, I suppose. Well, thank heaven I saved him from that.
It was you who made him write that insolent letter and make him break his promise.
Yes.
Then you must make him keep it. I give you till tomorrow morning, no more. If by then your husband has not solemnly bound himself to help me in the scheme which I am interested in,
This fraudulent speculation.
call it what you choose. I hold your husband in the hollow of my hand. And if you are wise, you'll make him do as I tell him.
You are impertinent. What has my husband to do with you?
And this woman, like you, like meets with like, is because your husband is himself fraudulent and dishonest, that we pair so well together. Between him and you there are chasms. Him and I are closer than friends. We are enemies, linked together. The same sin binds us.
How dare you class my husband with yourself? How dare you threaten him or me? Leave my house. You are unfit to enter it.
Your house. A house bought with the price of dishonor. A house, everything in it has been paid for by fraud. Ask him what the origin of your fortune is. Get him to tell you how you sold to a stockbroker a cabinet secret. Learn from him to what you owe your position.
It is not true. Robert, it is not true.
Look at him. Can he deny it? Does he dare to?
Go at once. You've done your worst now.
My worst. I am not yet finished with you. With either of you. I give you both till tomorrow at noon. If by then you have not done as I ask, the whole world shall know the origin of Robert Chiltern.
Show Mrs. Cheveley out.
You sold a cabinet secret for money? You began your life with fraud? You built up your career on dishonor? Oh, tell me it is not true. Lie to me, tell me it is not true.
Gertrude, what this woman says is quite true. But listen to me, you don't know the whole story. You don't know how I was tempted. Let me tell you everything.
No, don't touch me. I feel as if you have soiled me forever. Oh, what a mask you have been wearing all these years. A horrible painted mask. You sold yourself for money. The common thief were better. You built up your career on dishonor. You lied to the whole world, and yet you will not lie to me.
Gertrude.
No, say nothing. Your voice wakes terrible memories. Memories of things that made me love you. Memories of words that made me love you. Memories that are now horrible to me. And how I worshipped you. You were to me something apart from common life. Something good, noble, honest, without stain. And now, to think I made a man like you my ideal. The ideal of my life.
There was your mistake. There was your error. Why can't you women love us, faults and all? We have all feet of clay, men and women both. You made your idol out of me, and I had not the courage to come down, to show you my wounds, to tell you my weaknesses. I felt that I might lose your love for me, so I've lost it now. And so last night you ruined my life. Yes, ruined it. What this woman asked of me was nothing compared to what she offered me. She offered me peace, stability. The sin of my youth, which I thought was buried, rose up before me, hideous and horrible, with its hands at my throat. And I could have sent it back to its tomb, killed its record, burned the one witness against me. But you prevented me. You and no one else, you know it. And now what is there in store for me but public mockery, a terrible shame, ruin, the disgrace, a terrible lonely life, a dishonorable and lonely death that may be someday. Let women no more make ideals out of men. Let them not place them on pedestals and bow before them, or they may ruin other lives as completely as you. You whom I have so wildly loved have ruined mine.
got my second buttonhole for me, Phipps?
Yes, my lord.
Ah. Rather distinguished thing, isn't it, Phipps? I'm the only person of the smallest importance in London at present who wears a buttonhole.
I hadn't observed that, my lord.
You see, Phipps, what is fashionable is what one wears oneself. What is unfashionable is what other people wear.
Yes, my lord.
Just as vulgarity is simply the conduct of other people,
Yes, my lord.
and falsehoods, the truths of other people.
Yes, my lord.
Other people are quite dreadful. The only possible society is oneself.
Yes, my lord.
To love yourself, Phipps, is the beginning of a lifelong romance.
Yes, my lord.
I don't think I quite like it, Phipps. Makes me look a little too old. Makes me almost in the prime of life, eh?
I don't observe any alteration in your lordship's appearance.
You don't, Phipps?
No, my lord.
Well, I'm not quite sure. For the future, a more trivial buttonhole on Thursday evenings.
Yes, my lord. I will speak to the florist about it. She has had a loss in the family of late, which may account for the lack of triviality which your lordship complains of in the buttonhole.
Thing about the lower classes in England, they are always losing their relations.
Yes, my lord. They are extremely fortunate in that respect.
Any letters, Phipps?
3, my lord.
I will want my cab round in 20 minutes.
Yes, my lord.
Oh, and Phipps,
Yes, my lord.
when did this one arrive?
It was delivered by hand this morning, just after your lordship left for the club.
That will do. Lady Chiltern's handwriting on Lady Chiltern's pink notepaper. Now that is rather curious. I thought it was Robert who was to write. I wonder what Lady Chiltern has got to say to me. I want you, I trust you, I'm coming to you. Gertrude. I want you, I trust you, I'm coming to you. Oh, so she has found out everything. Oh, poor woman, poor woman. What an hour to call, 10 o'clock? She'll have to forego going to the Berkshires. I'm not expected at the bachelor's ball tonight, so I shall certainly go there. Lady Chiltern. I must make her stand by her husband. That is the only thing for her to do. It's the only thing for any woman to do. But 10 o'clock, she should be here soon. I must tell Phipps I'm not in to anyone else.
Lord Caversham.
Oh, why do parents always arrive at the wrong moment? It's an extraordinary mistake in nature, I suppose. Ah, delighted to see you, my dear father.
Take my cloak off.
Is it worth it?
Of course it is worthwhile, sir. Which is the most comfortable chair?
Why, it is this one. It is the one I use myself when I have visitors.
Thank you. No draught, I hope, in this room.
No, father.
Glad to hear it. Can't stand drafts. No drafts at home.
Good many breezes, father.
Oh, don't understand your meaning, sir. I've come to have a serious conversation with you, sir.
My dear father, at this hour?
Well, sir, it is only 10 o'clock. What is your objection to the hour? I think the hour an admirable hour.
The fact is, father, it is not my day for speaking seriously. I'm very sorry, but it is not my day.
What do you mean, sir?
During this season, my dear father, I only talk seriously on the first Tuesday from every month, from 4 to 7.
Well, make it Tuesday, sir. Make it Tuesday.
But it is after 7, father. My doctor says I am not to have any serious conversation after 7. It makes me talk in my sleep.
Talk in your sleep, sir. What does that matter? You are not married.
No, father, I am not married.
That is what I've come to talk to you about. Why, when I was your age, I had been an inconsolable widower for 3 months, and I was already paying my respects to your admirable mother. Damn, sir, it is your duty to get married. You can't always be living for pleasure. Every man of position is married nowadays. Bachelors are not fashionable anymore. They are a damaged lot. Too much is known about them. You must get a wife, sir. Look where your friend Robert Chiltern has got to, by probity, hard work, and a sensible marriage with a good woman. Why don't you imitate him, sir? Why don't you take him for your model?
I think I shall, Father.
If you would, then I would be happy. At present, I make your mother's life miserable on your account. Heartless, sir. Very heartless.
I hope not, Father.
And it is high time for you to get married. You are 34 years of age, sir.
Yes, Father, but I only admit to 32. 31 and a half when I have a really good buttonhole. This buttonhole is not trivial enough.
I tell you, sir, you are 34. And there is a draft in this room besides, which makes your conduct worse. Why did you tell me there was no draft, sir? I feel the draft. I feel it distinctly.
So do I, Father. But let me help you on with your cloak. I'll come and see you tomorrow morning, and we can talk over anything you like. Let me help you on with your cloak.
No, sir. I have called this evening for a definite purpose, and I shall stay through at all costs to my health or yours. Put down my cloak, sir.
Certainly, Father. But let us go into another room. There is a dreadful draught in here. Phipps?
Yes, my lord.
Is there a good fire in the smoking room?
Yes, my lord.
There is a lady coming to see me tonight, and when she arrives, we must show her into the drawing room. You understand?
Yes, my lord.
It is a matter of the greatest importance, Phipps.
I understand, my lord.
No one else is to be admitted under any circumstances.
I understand.
Oh, that must be the lady here now. I will see her myself.
Well, sir, am I to wait attendance on you?
In a moment, Father. Do excuse me. Remember, Phipps, into that room. You understand?
Yes, my lord.
What name, madam?
Is Lord Goring not at home? I was told he was here.
His lordship is engaged with Lord Caversham at present.
How very filial.
His lordship told me to ask you to be kind enough to wait in the drawing room for him. His lordship will come to you then.
Lord Goring is expecting me.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you quite sure?
His lordship told me that if a lady called, I was to ask her to wait in the drawing room. His lordship was very clear on that point.
How very thoughtful of you. To expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly modern intellect. A dreary bachelor's drawing room, honestly. I shall have to alter this. No, not that pen. It is far too varied. Light some candles.
Certainly, ma'am.
I hope the candles have very becoming shades.
We have had no complaints of them as of yet.
I wonder what woman he is waiting for tonight. It'll be delightful to catch him. Men are always looking so silly when they're caught. They are always being caught. What a very interesting room. A very interesting picture. I wonder what his correspondence is like. Bills, cards, debts, and dowagers. Dull correspondence. How silly it is to write on pink paper. I know that handwriting. There's Gertrude Chiltern. I wonder what Gertrude is writing to him about. Something horrid about me, I suppose. Oh, I hate that woman. I want you. I trust you. I'm coming to you. Gertrude. I want you. I trust you. I'm coming to you.
The candles in the drawing room are lit, madam, as you request.
Thank you.
I trust that the shades will be to your liking. They are the finest we have. His lordship himself uses them when he is dressing for dinner.
They would be perfectly right.
My dear father, if I am to get married, surely you will allow me to choose the time, place, and person, particularly the person.
That is a matter for me, sir. You would probably make a very poor choice. There is property at stake. This is not a matter for affection. Affection comes later on in married life.
Yes, affection comes when two people thoroughly dislike each other, father, doesn't it?
Certainly, sir. Certainly not, sir. You are speaking very foolishly tonight. What I say is that marriage is a matter for common sense.
But women who have common sense are so curiously plain, father, aren't they? Of course, I only speak from hearsay.
No woman, plain or pretty, has any common sense at all. Common sense is the privilege of our sex.
Quite so. And we men are so self-sacrificing that we never use it, do we, father?
I use it, sir. I use nothing else.
So my mother tells me.
It is the secret of your mother's happiness. You are heartless, sir, very heartless.
I hope not, father.
What a piece of good luck meeting you on the doorstep. Your servant had just told me you were not at home. How extraordinary.
The fact is, Robert, I gave specific orders that I was not to be at home to anyone tonight. I am horribly busy. Even my father had a comparatively cold reception. He complained of a draft the whole time.
Doctor, you must be home to me. You are my best friend. Perhaps tomorrow you'll be my only friend. My wife has discovered everything.
I thought as much.
Really? How?
Oh, merely something in the expression of your face as you came in. But who told her?
Mrs. Cheveley herself. Now the woman that I love knows that I began my career with an act of low dishonesty, that I built up my life upon the sands of shame, that I sold, like a common huckster, a secret that had been entrusted to me as a man of honor. I thank heaven that poor Lord Bradley died before he knew that I had betrayed him. Or would to God that I had died before I had been so horribly tempted, or fallen so low.
You've heard nothing yet in response to your wire to Vienna?
Yes, I received a letter from the first secretary at 8 o'clock.
Well?
There's nothing, absolutely nothing against her. On the contrary, she occupies a rather high position in society. It's sort of an open secret that the Baron left her the greater part of his immense fortune. Aside from that, I can learn nothing.
So she turns out not to be a spy, then?
Spies are of no use nowadays. Their profession is quite over. The newspapers do their work for them.
And thunderingly well they do it.
Arthur, I'm parched with thirst. Why not explain for something? Maybe some hawk and seltzer.
Yes, certainly. Let me.
Thanks. Arthur, I don't know what to do. You are my only friend. Or what a friend you are. The only friend that I can trust. I can trust you absolutely, can't I?
Of course, Robert. Bring some Hawkins seltzer, Phipps.
Yes, madam.
Oh, and Phipps. Will you excuse me for a moment, Robert? I'd like to give some instructions to my servant.
Certainly.
When that lady arrives, tell her I am not expected home this evening. Tell her I've been suddenly called out of town. You understand?
The lady is in the drawing room, my lord. You told me to show her into the drawing room.
You did quite right. Oh, what a mess I'm in. No, I think I shall get through it. I'll give her a lecture through the door. Awkward thing to manage, though.
Arthur, tell me what I should do. I feel as though my life were crumbling about me. I'm a ship without a rudder on a night without a star.
Robert, you love your wife, don't you?
I love her more than anything. I used to think that ambition was the great thing, but it is not. Love is the great thing in the world. There's nothing but love, and I love her. I'm defamed in her eyes. I'm ignoble in her eyes. There's a wide gulf between us now. She has found me out, Arthur. She has found me out.
Well, has she not in her own life done some folly, some indiscretion that she should not forgive your sin?
Why? Never. She does not know what temptation is. She stands apart as good women do, pitiless in her perfection, cold and stern and unyielding. But I love her, Arthur. We have no children, and I have no one else to love, no one to love me. Perhaps if God had sent us children, she might have been kinder to me. But God has given us a lonely house. She has cut my heart in two. Let us not speak of it. I was brutal to her this evening. I suppose when sinners speak to saints, they are brutal always. I said things to her that were hideously true from my side, my point of view, but don't let us speak of that.
Your wife will forgive you, Robert. Perhaps at this moment she has forgiven you. She loves you, Robert. Why should she not forgive?
God correct it. God correct it. But Arthur, there is something else that I came here tonight to tell you.
Often so, sir.
Thank you. Is your carriage here, Robert?
No, I walked from the club.
So Robert will take my cab, then?
Yes, no.
Robert, you don't mind my sending you away, do you?
You must let me stay for 5 minutes. I've decided what I'm going to do at the house tonight. The debate on the Argentine Canal begins at 11. What was that?
Nothing.
I heard a chair fall in the next room. Someone has been listening.
No, there is no one there.
I see a light in the room and the door is ajar. Someone has been listening to every secret of my life. Arthur, what does this mean?
Robert, you are excited, unnerved. I tell you, there is no one there. Sit down.
Give me your word that there's no one there.
Yes.
Your word of honor?
Yes.
Arthur, let me see for myself. No one there, then why should I not look in that room?
Robert, I have told you that there is no one there. That is enough.
It's not enough. I insist on going into this room. You have told me no one is there, so what reason can you have for refusing me?
For God's sake, don't. There is someone there. Someone you must not see.
I thought so.
I forbid you to enter that room.
Sit down. My life is at stake, and I don't care who is there. I will know who it is whom I have told my secret and my shame.
So great heavens, so what?
What explanation can you have for the presence of that woman here?
Robert, I swear to you on my honor that that woman is stainless and guiltless.
She is a vile and infamous thing.
Don't say that, Robert. It was for your sake she came here. It was to try and save you she came here. And no one else.
You are mad. What have I to do with her intrigues with you? Let her remain your mistress. You are welcome. But if she, corrupt and shameful, you, false as a friend, treacherous as an enemy even.
It's not true, Robert. Before heaven, it is not true. In her presence and in yours, I will explain all.
Let me pass, sir. You have lied enough upon your word of honor.
Good evening, Lord Gordon.
Oh, good heavens! Mrs. Cheatham, may I ask what you were doing in my drawing room?
It's merely listening. I find I have a perfect passion for listening through keyholes. I hear such wonderful things through them.
Doesn't that sound rather like tempting Providence?
Surely Providence can resist temptation by now.
I'm glad you've called. I'm going to give you some good advice.
Pray don't. One should never give a woman anything she cannot wear in the evening.
I see you're quite as willful as you used to be.
Far more. I've greatly improved. I've had more experience.
Too much experience is a dangerous thing, Mrs. Cheveley. But pray, have a cigarette. Half the pretty women in London smoke cigarettes. Personally, I prefer the other half.
No, I never smoke. My dressmaker wouldn't like it. And a woman's first duty in life is to her dressmaker, isn't it? What her second duty is, no one has yet discovered.
You've come here to sell me Robert Chiltern's letter, haven't you?
To offer it to you on conditions. How did you guess?
Because you haven't mentioned the subject. Have you got it with you?
A well-made dress has no pockets.
What is your price?
How absurdly English you are. Englishmen think that everything can be solved with a checkbook. My dear Arthur, I have very much more money than you have. Certainly more than Robert Chiltern has got hold of. Money is not what I want.
Then what do you want, Mrs. Cheveley?
Why don't you call me Laura?
I don't like the name.
You used to adore it.
Yes, that's why.
You loved me once,
Yes,
and you asked me to be your wife,
that was the natural result of my loving you.
and you threw me over, because you saw, or said you saw, poor old Lord Mortlake trying to have a violent flirtation with me in the conservatory at Denby.
I'm under the impression that my lawyer settled that matter with you on certain terms dictated by yourself.
At that time I was poor and you were rich.
Quite so, and that is why you pretended to love me.
Poor old Lord Mortlake. He really only had two topics of conversation, his gout and his wives. I could never make out which he was referring to. He used the most horrid language for both. Well, you were silly, Arthur. Lord Mortlake was never anything more to me than an amusement. I love you, Arthur.
My dear Mrs. Cheveley, you've always been far too clever to know anything about love.
I did love you, and you loved me. You know you loved me. And love is a very wonderful thing, isn't it? I suppose that once a man has loved a woman, there is nothing he won't do for her, except continue to love her.
Yes, except that.
I'm tired of living abroad. I want to come back to London and have a charming house, have a salon. I knew last night when I saw you at the Chilterns, you were the only man I've ever cared for. If I've cared for anyone, Arthur. So, that is why, on the morning of the day you marry me, I will give you Sir Robert Chiltern's letter. That is my offer. I will give it to you now if you promise to marry me.
Now,
Tomorrow.
are you really quite serious?
Quite soon.
I should make you a very bad husband.
I don't mind bad husbands. I've had two.
You mean that you amuse yourself immensely, don't you?
What do you know about my married life?
Nothing, but I can read it like a book.
What book?
The book of Numbers.
Do you suppose it is quite charming for you to be so rude to a woman in your own house?
In the case of very fascinating women, sex is a challenge, not a defense.
I suppose that is meant for a compliment. My dear Arthur, women are never disarmed by compliments. Men always are. That is the real difference between the two sexes.
Women are never disarmed by anything, as far as I know them.
So you're going to allow your greatest friend, Robert Chiltern, to be ruined rather than marrying someone with considerable attractions left. I thought you would have risen to some great sense of self-sacrifice, Arthur. I think you should. And the rest of your life could be spent contemplating your own perfections.
Oh, I do that as it is. And self-sacrifice is a thing that really should be put down by law. It is so demoralizing to the people for whom one sacrifices himself. They always go to the bad.
As if anything could demoralize Robert Chiltern. You seem to forget that I know his real character.
What you know about him is not his real character. It was an act of folly done in his youth. Dishonorable, I admit. Shameful, I admit. Unworthy of him, I admit. And therefore, not his real character.
How you men stand up for each other.
How you women war against each other.
I war against one woman. Against Gertrude Chiltern. I hate her, and I hate her now more than ever.
Because you brought a real tragedy into her life, I suppose.
The only real tragedy in a woman's life is the fact that her past is her lover, and her future invariably her husband.
Lady Chiltern knows nothing of the kind of life to which you are alluding.
Well, Arthur, I guess you may regard this romantic interview as a man. And you admit it was romantic, don't you? For the privilege of being your wife, I was ready to surrender a great prize. The climax of my diplomatic career. You declined. Very well. If Sir Robert does not uphold my Argentine scheme, I expose him. Voila.
No, you mustn't do that. It would be vile, horrible, infamous.
Don't use big words. They mean so little. It is a commercial transaction, that is all. If Sir Robert does not uphold my price, I'll have to pay the world a greater price. There is nothing more to be said. I must go. Won't you shake hands?
With you? No. Your transaction with Robert Chiltern may pass as a loathsome commercial transaction of a loathsome commercial age. But you seem to have forgotten that you came here tonight to talk of love. You whose lips desecrated the word love. You to whom the thing is a book closely sealed went this afternoon to one of the most noble and gentle women in the world to degrade her husband before her eyes, to try and kill her love for him, to put poison in her heart and bitterness in her life, to break her idol, and it may be spoil her soul. That I cannot forgive you. That was horrible, and for that there can be no forgiveness.
You are unjust to me, Arthur. Believe me, you are unjust to me. I didn't go to taunt Gertrude at all. I had no idea of doing anything of the kind when I entered. I called with Lady Markby, simply to ask whether an ornament, a jewel, that I had lost somewhere last night had been found at the Chilterns. If you don't believe me, you can ask Lady Markby. She will tell you that it is true. The scene that occurred happened right after Lady Markby had left, and was really forced on me by Gertrude's rudeness and sneers. I called, only to have malice, if you like. Really to ask whether a diamond brooch might have been found, and that was the origin of the whole thing.
A diamond snake brooch with a ruby?
Yes. How did you know?
Why? Because it is found. In point of fact, I found it myself and stupidly forgot to tell the butler anything about it as I was leaving. It is here in this drawer. Oh, there was that one. This is the brooch, isn't it?
Yes. I'm so glad to have it back. It was a gift.
Won't you wear it?
Certainly. You pin it in. Why did you put it on as a bracelet? I didn't know it could be worn as a bracelet.
Really?
Yeah. It looks quite well on me as a bracelet, doesn't it?
Yes, much better than when I saw it last.
When did you see it last?
Oh, 10 years ago on Lady Berkshire, from whom you stole it.
What do you mean?
I mean that you stole that ornament from my cousin, Mary Berkshire, to whom I gave it when she was married. Suspicion fell on a wretched servant who was sent away in disgrace. I recognized it last night, and I resolved not to tell anyone about it until I'd found the thief. And I've found the thief now, and have heard her own confession.
It is not true.
Why, you know it is true. Why, thief is written across your face at this moment.
I will deny the whole affair from beginning to end. I will say I've never seen this wretched thing, that it was never in my possession.
The drawback of stealing a thing, Mrs. Cheveley, is that one never knows how wonderful the thing that one steals is. You can't get that bracelet off unless you know where the spring is. And I see you don't know where it is. It is rather difficult to find.
You brute! You coward!
Oh, don't use such big words. They mean so little.
What are you going to do?
I'm going to ring for my servant. He is an admirable servant, always comes in the moment one rings for him. And when he comes, I shall tell him to fetch the police.
Police? What for?
Why, tomorrow the Berkshires will prosecute you. That is what the police are for.
I'll do anything you want. Anything in the world you want.
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
Stop. Stop. You must give me time to
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
I don't have it with me.
You know you are lying. Give it to me at once. This is it? Yes. For so well-dressed a woman, Mrs. Cheveley, you have moments of admirable common sense. I congratulate you.
Would you please get me a glass of water?
Certainly.
Thank you. Now, would you help me on with my clothes?
With pleasure, Mrs. Cheveley.
I find I'm never going to try to harm Robert Chiltern again.
Fortunately, you have not the chance.
Well, even if I had, I wouldn't. In fact, I'm going to render him a great service.
I am charmed to hear it. It is a reformation.
Yes. I can't stand to see such an honorable English gentleman, such an upright English gentleman, being so shamefully deceived, and so...
Well,
I seem to find that somehow Gertrude Chiltern's dying speech and confession somehow straight into my pocket.
what do you mean?
I mean, I'm going to send Robert Chiltern a love letter that his wife wrote to you tonight.
Love letter.
I want you, I trust you, I am coming to you, Gertrude.
You wretched woman, must you always be thieving? Give me back that letter. I will take it from you by force. You shall not leave this room until I've got it.
Lord Goring merely rang that you might show me out. Good evening, Lord Goring.
It is a great nuisance. I can't find anyone in this house to talk to, and I am full of interesting information. I feel like the latest edition of something or other.
Sir Robert has left the Foreign Office, my lord.
Is Lady Chiltern not down yet?
Her ladyship has not yet come in from writing. Miss Chiltern has not yet left her room.
Ah, well, that is something.
Lord Caversham has been waiting some time in the library for Sir Robert. I told him that your lordship was here.
Thanks. Would you kindly tell him I've gone?
I shall look at my lord.
Really, I don't want to see my father 3 days running. It's a great deal too much excitement for any son. I hope to heaven he won't come up. Fathers should be neither seen nor heard. It's the only proper basis for family life. Mothers are different. Mothers are darlings.
Well, sir, what are you doing here? Wasting your time as usual.
My dear father, when one pays a visit, it is for the purpose of wasting other people's time, not one's own.
Have you been thinking over what I spoke to you about last evening?
I have been thinking of nothing else.
Engaged to be married yet?
Not yet, but I hope to be before lunchtime.
You can have till dinner time if it would be of any convenience to you.
Thanks awfully, but I'd sooner be engaged before lunch.
Never know when you are serious or not.
Neither do I, Father.
I suppose you have read the Times article this morning.
The Times? Certainly not. I only read the Morning Post. All that one needs to know about modern life is where the duchesses are. Anything else is quite demoralizing.
Do you mean to say that you have not read the Times leading article on Robert Chiltern's career?
Good heavens, no! What does it say?
What should it say? Everything complimentary, of course. Oh, Robert Chiltern's speech last night on this Argentine Canal scheme was one of the finest pieces of oratory delivered in the House since Canning.
Ah, never heard of Canning. Never wanted to. But did Chiltern uphold the scheme?
Uphold it, sir. Shows how little you know him. Why, he denounced it roundly, and the whole system of modern political finance. This is the turning point in Robert Chiltern's career, as the Times points out. You really should read this article, sir. Sir Robert Chiltern, most rising of our young statesmen, brilliant orator, unblemished career, represents what is best in English public life, a noble contrast to the lax morality so common among foreign politicians. They will never say that of you, sir.
I sincerely hope not, Father. But I am delighted at what you tell me about Robert. Thoroughly delighted. It shows he's got pluck.
He has got more than pluck, sir. He has got genius.
Nah, I prefer pluck. It is not so common nowadays as genius is.
Wish you would go into Parliament.
My dear Father, Only people who appear dull ever make it into the House of Commons, and only people who are dull ever succeed there.
Why don't you try and do something useful with your life?
I'm far too young.
Oh, I hate this affectation of youth, sir. It is a great deal too prevalent nowadays.
Youth is not an affectation. Youth is an art.
Why don't you propose to that pretty Miss Chiltern?
I am of a very nervous disposition, Father, especially in the morning.
I don't suppose there is the smallest chance of her accepting you.
Well, I don't know how the betting stands today.
And if she did accept you, she would be the prettiest fool in all of England.
That is just what I should like to marry. A thoroughly sensible wife would reduce me to a condition of absolute idiocy in less than 6 months.
You don't deserve her, sir.
My dear Father, if we men married the women we deserved, we should have a very bad time of it.
How do you do, Lord Caversham? I hope Lady Caversham is well.
Lady Caversham is as usual, as usual.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
And Lady Caversham's bonnets, are they all better?
Oh, they have had a serious relapse, I'm sorry to say.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
I hope an operation will not be necessary.
If it is, we shall have to give Lady Caversham a narcotic, eh? She would never consent to a feather being touched otherwise.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
Oh, are you here? Of course, you understand that after your missing your appointment this morning, I am never going to speak to you again.
Please don't say such a thing. You know you are the one person in London I'd really like to have listen to me.
Lord Goring, I never believe a single word either you or I say to each other.
You're quite right, my dear, quite right, as far as he is concerned.
Lord Caversham, do you think you can make your son behave a little better occasionally, just as a change?
I regret to say that I have no control at all over my son. I wish I had. If I had, I know what I would make him do.
Has one of those terribly weak natures that are not susceptible to influence.
He is very heartless. Very heartless.
I see I'm a little in the way here.
It is very good for you to be in the way, and to know what other people are saying about you behind your back.
Oh, I don't at all like knowing what people say of me behind my back. Makes me far too conceited.
With that, I really must bid you good morning.
Oh, you're not going to leave me all alone with Lord Goring, are you? Especially at such an early hour in the day.
I'm afraid to say that I can't take him with me to Downing Street. It is not the Prime Minister's day for seeing the unemployed.
People who don't keep their appointments in the park are horrid.
Detestable.
I'm glad you admit it. I wish you would not look so pleased about it.
Oh, I can't help it. I always look pleased when I'm with you.
Then I suppose it is my duty to remain with you.
Of course it is.
But my duty is a thing I never do. On principle, it always depresses me. So I'm afraid I must leave you.
Oh, please don't, Miss Mabel. I have something very particular to say to you.
Oh. Is it a proposal?
Why, yes, it is. I am bound to say that it is.
I'm so glad. That makes the second today.
The second today? Now what conceited ass has been impertinent enough to dare to propose to you before I had a chance to propose?
Tommy Trafford, of course. It is one of Tommy's days for proposing. He always proposes on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the season.
You didn't accept him, I hope.
I make it a rule never to accept Tommy. That is why he goes on proposing. Though as you didn't turn up this morning, I very nearly said yes. It would have been an excellent lesson for both him and for you if I had. It would have taught you both better manners.
Bother Tommy Trafford. Tommy is a silly little ass. I love you.
I know. And I think you might have mentioned it before. I'm sure I have given you heaps of opportunities.
Mabel, do be serious. Please be serious.
That's the sort of thing a man says to a girl before he marries her. He never says it afterwards.
Mabel, I have told you that I love you. Can't you love me a little in return?
Oh, Arthur. You silly Arthur. If you knew anything about anything, which you don't, you would know that I adore you. Everyone in London knows it except you. It's a public scandal the way I adore you. I've been going about the last 6 months telling the whole of society that I adore you.
Oh. Don't you know, my dear, that I was awfully afraid of being refused?
But Arthur, you've never been refused by anybody yet, have you? I can't imagine anyone refusing you.
I'm afraid I'm not quite good enough for you, Miss Mabel.
Oh, I'm so glad, darling. I was afraid you were.
And I'm afraid I'm a little over 30.
Dear, you look weeks younger than that.
How sweet of you to say so. And I am bound to confess to you that I am fearfully extravagant.
But so am I, Arthur, so we're sure to agree. Now I must go see Gertrude.
Oh, must you really?
Yes.
Well, then do tell her that I've been meaning to speak to her particularly. I've been waiting all morning to see either her or Robert.
Do you mean to say you did not come here expressly to propose to me?
No. That was a flash of genius. My last.
Delighted to hear it. Now don't stir. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And don't fall into any temptations while I'm away.
Oh, dear Mabel, while you are gone, there are none. It makes me horribly dependent on you.
Oh, good morning, dear. How pretty you are looking.
How pale you are looking, Gertrude.
Good morning, Lord Loring.
Good morning, Lady Chiltern.
I shall be in the conservatory, under the second palm tree to the left.
The second to the left.
Yes, the usual palm tree.
I have a certain amount of very good news to tell you, Lady Chiltern. Mrs. Cheveley gave me up Robert's letter last night, and I've burned it. Robert is safe.
Oh, safe. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Oh, what a good friend you are to him, to us.
Yes, there is only one person who could be said to be in any sort of danger now.
Who is that?
Yourself.
I? In danger? What do you mean?
Danger is too great a word. It is a word I should not have used. However, I admit that I have something to tell you that may distress you, that terribly distresses me. Yesterday evening, you wrote me a very beautiful, womanly letter asking me for my help as one of your oldest friends, as one of your husband's oldest friends. Mrs. Cheveley stole that letter from my rooms.
Well, what use is it to her? Why should she not have it?
Lady Chiltern, I will be quite frank with you. Mrs. Cheveley puts a certain construction on that letter and proposes to send it to your husband.
What construction could she put on it? Oh, not that. Oh, not that. Oh, that I, in trouble, and wanting your help, propose to come to you, that you may advise me, assist me. Oh, are there women so horrible as that? And she proposes to have this sent to my husband? Oh, tell me what happened. Tell me all that happened.
Well, Mrs. Cheveley was concealed in a room adjoining my library without my knowledge. I thought that the lady waiting to see me was yourself. Robert came in unexpectedly, and a chair or something fell in the room, so he forced his way in and discovered her. I still thought it was you, and we had a terrible scene. Robert left me in anger, and at the end of everything, Mrs. Cheveley got hold of your letter. How? She stole it. How or when? I have no idea.
At what hour did this occur?
At 10:30. And now, I propose that we tell Robert the whole thing at once.
You want me to tell Robert that the woman you expected last night was not Mrs. Cheevely, but myself? That it was I who you thought was concealed in a room in your house at 10:30 at night? You want me to tell him that?
I think it is better that he should know the whole truth.
I couldn't. I couldn't.
May I do it?
No.
Lady Chiltern, you are wrong.
No. The letter must be intercepted, that is all. Letters come from for every moment of the day. His secretaries open them and hand them to him. Oh, I dare not ask any of the servants to bring me his letters. It would be impossible. Oh, why don't you tell me what to do?
Pray be calm, Lady Chiltern, and just answer the questions that I am going to put to you. You said that his secretaries open his letters, right?
Yes.
Well, who is with him today? Mr. Trafford, isn't it?
No, Mr. Montfort, I think.
You can trust him?
Oh, how do I know?
Well, he would do what you asked him, wouldn't he?
I think so.
Your letter was on pink paper. He could recognize it without reading it, couldn't he, by the color?
Oh, I suppose so.
Is he in the house now?
Yes.
Then I will go and see him myself and tell him that a certain letter written on pink paper is to be forwarded to Robert today. And at all costs, it is not to reach him. Robert is coming upstairs with the letter in his hand.
Saved his life. What have you done with mine?
I want you. I trust you. I am coming to you, Gertrude. Oh, my love, is this true? Do you indeed trust me and want me? Why, if so, it was for me to come to you and not for you to write of coming to me. This letter of yours, it makes me feel as though nothing in the world could hurt me now. You want me, Gertrude? You trust me, Gertrude? Why did you not write that you loved me?
Because I loved you.
Oh, Gertrude. You don't know how I feel. When Montfort passed me your letter across the table, he had opened it by mistake, I suppose, without reading the handwriting on the envelope. And I read it. I didn't care what punishment or shame lay in store for me. I only thought that he loved me still.
There is no public shame in store for you, nor any public disgrace. Mrs. Cheevely has handed over to Lord Goring the document that was in her possession, and he's destroyed it.
Are you sure of this?
Yes, Lord Goring has just told me.
Then I am safe. Oh, what a wonderful thing it is to be safe. These past 2 days I have been in terror, but I am safe now. How did Arthur destroy my letter? Tell me.
He burned it.
I wish I had been there to see that one sin of my youth burning to ashes. How many men are there in modern day who would not like to see their past burning to white ash before them? Is Arthur still here?
Yes, he's in the conservatory.
I'm so glad now that I made that speech before the house last night. I made it thinking that public shame would be in store for me, but it has not been so.
Public honor has been the result.
I think so. I fear so, almost. For although I am safe from detection, although every proof against me is destroyed, I suppose, Gertrude, I suppose I ought to retire from public life?
Yes, Robert, you should do that. It is your duty to do that.
It is much to sacrifice.
No, it will be much to gain.
And you would be happy living somewhere alone with me? Abroad, perhaps, or in the country, away from London, away from public life? You would have no regrets?
None, Robert.
Oh, Arthur. I have to thank you for all that you've done. I don't know how I can repay you.
Oh, well, my dear fellow, I'll tell you at once. At this present moment, under the usual palm tree, or I mean, in the conservatory.
Lord Caversham.
Really, that admirable father of mine makes a bad habit of appearing at the wrong moment. It is very heartless of him. Very heartless indeed.
Good morning, Lady Chiltern. Chiltern, I congratulate you on your brilliant speech last night. I have just left the Prime Minister's office, and you are to have the vacant seat in the cabinet.
A seat in the cabinet?
Yes. Here is the Prime Minister's letter.
A seat in the cabinet?
Certainly, and you well deserve it too. You've got everything that we want so much in political life nowadays. High character, high moral tone, high principles. Everything that you have not got, sir, and never will have.
Oh, but my dear father, I don't like principles. I prefer prejudices.
Well, Caversham, I cannot accept your offer. I've made up my mind to decline it.
Decline it, sir.
Yes. I've decided to retire at once from public life.
Decline a seat in the cabinet and retire from public life. Never heard such damned nonsense in the whole course of my existence. Lady Chiltern, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon, Chiltern. Don't grin like that, sir.
No, father.
Lady Chiltern, you are a sensible woman. The most sensible woman I know. The most sensible woman in all of London. Would you kindly prevent your husband from making such from taking such a... Would you kindly prevent him from doing that, Lady Chiltern?
I approve of my husband's termination, Lord Caversham.
Oh, good heavens, you approve of it.
I admire him for it. I admire him immensely for it. I've never admired him so much before. He's finer than even I thought him. You will go and put your letter now to the Prime Minister, won't you, Robert? You must not hesitate about it.
I suppose I had better write it at once. Such offers are not repeated. If you'll excuse me, Lord Caversham.
I may come with you, may I not?
Of course, Gertrude.
What is the matter with this family? Something wrong here, eh? Idiocy, I suppose. Probably hereditary. Wife as well as husband, both of them. Very sad indeed. And they are not an old family. Can't understand it.
It is not idiocy, father, I assure you.
What is it then, sir?
It is what is nowadays called a high moral tone. That is all.
Oh, I hate all these newfangled names, sir. Same thing we used to call idiocy 50 years ago. Shan't stay in this house any longer.
Oh, well, do just go in here for a moment, father. Under the third palm tree to the left, the usual palm tree.
What, sir?
I beg your pardon, my dear father. In the conservatory, there is someone there I should like you to talk to.
What about, sir?
About myself.
Not a subject on which much eloquence is possible.
No, father, but the lady is like me. She doesn't think much of eloquence in others. She thinks it a little loud. Oh, Lady Chiltern. Why are you playing Mrs. Cheveley's cards?
I don't understand you.
Well, Mrs. Cheveley made an attempt to ruin your husband, either to drive him from public life or to make him adopt a dishonorable position. From the latter tragedy, you saved him. The former, you are now thrusting upon him. Why seek to do Robert the harm that Mrs. Cheveley tried to do and failed?
Lord Gorham?
Lady Chiltern, allow me. Yesterday, you wrote me a letter asking me for my help. Now is when you really want my help, when you've got to trust in me. Trust in my counsel and judgment. You love Robert. Why should you scourge him with rods for a sin done in his youth, before he knew you, before he knew himself? His actions today are proof enough of his changed character. Don't make any terrible mistake, Lady Chiltern.
It was my husband himself who wishes to retire from public life. He feels it is his duty. It was he who first said so.
Rather than lose your love, Robert would do anything, wreck his whole career, as he's on the brink of doing now. He's making for you a terrible sacrifice. Take my advice, Lady Chiltern, and do not accept a sacrifice so great. Robert has been punished enough.
We have both been punished. I set him up too high.
Well, do not for that reason now set him down too low. If he has fallen from his altar, do not thrust him into the mire. Your husband's life is at this moment in your hands.
There's a draft of my letter. Shall I read it to you?
Let me see it.
What are you doing?
I will not spoil your life for you, nor see you spoil it for me as a sacrifice, a useless sacrifice. Your actions today are proof of your changed character. That has certainly been punished enough. I have just been persuaded of this by Lord Goring.
My wife. My wife. Arthur. It seems I have always...
Dear no, my good fellow, your debt is to Lady Chiltern, not to me.
I owe you much. And now, what is it you were going to ask me just now as Lord Caversham came in?
Yes. Robert, you are your sister's guardian. I would like your consent to my marriage with her. That is all.
Oh, I'm so glad, so glad.
Thank you, Lady Chiltern.
My sister, to be your wife.
Yes.
I'm very sorry, Arthur, but the thing is entirely out of the question. I have Mabel's future happiness to think of. And I don't think that her happiness would be secure in your hands. And I cannot have her sacrificed.
Sacrificed?
Yes. Utterly sacrificed. Loveless marriages are awful. But there's one thing worse than a loveless marriage. A marriage in which there is love, but on one side only. Faith, but on one side only. Devotion, but on one side only. And in which of the two hearts one is sure to be broken.
But I love Mabel. No other woman has any place in my life.
Robert, if they love each other, why should they not be married?
Arthur cannot give Mabel the love that she deserves.
And what reason have you for saying that?
You really require me to tell you.
Certainly, I do.
As you choose. When I called on you last night, I discovered Mrs. Cheveley concealed in your room. It was between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. I do not wish to say more on the subject. You were engaged to be married to her at one time, and the fascination that she exercised over you then seems to have returned. Her intrigues with you have nothing to do with me whatsoever, as I told you last night. But you spoke to me last night of her as a woman pure and stainless. As a woman respected and honored. That may be true. I cannot give my sister's life into your hands. It would be wrong. It would be unjust, infamously unjust of her.
I have nothing more to say.
Robert, it was not Mrs. Cheveley whom Lord Goring expected last night.
Lady Chiltern.
Not Mrs. Cheveley. Who was it then?
It was your own wife. Robert, yesterday afternoon, Lord Goring came to me and told me that if I was ever in any trouble, or I could go to him for help, because he was our oldest and best friend. Later on, after that terrible scene in his room, I wrote to him, telling him that I trusted him, that I had wanted him, that I was going to him. Yes, that. I did go to Lord Goring's after all. I thought that it was from ourselves alone that help can come. Pride made me think that. Mrs. Cheveley went. She stole my letter and had it sent anonymously to you this morning, that you should think, oh, Robert, I cannot tell you what she wished you to think.
What? Have I fallen so low in your eyes that you thought for even a moment I could have doubted your goodness? Gersh, you are to me the white image of all good people. Arthur, you may go to Mabel and you have my best wishes. no name at the beginning of this letter. The brilliant Mrs. Cheveley does not seem to have noticed that. There really should be a name.
Let me write yours. It is you I trust in me. You and none else.
Well, really, Lady Chiltern, I think I should have back my own letter.
No, you shall have Mabel.
Well, I hope she hasn't changed her mind. It's been nearly 20 minutes since I saw her last.
Oh boy. I think your father's conversation much more prudent than yours. I shall only speak to Lord Caversham in the future, and always under the usual palm tree.
What does this mean, sir? You don't mean to say that this pretty, charming, clever young lady has been so foolish as to accept you?
Yes, Father. And Chiltern has been prudent enough to accept the seat in the cabinet.
Ah! I'm very glad to hear that. Chiltern, I congratulate you. If the country doesn't go to the dogs or the radicals, we shall have you Prime Minister someday.
Luncheon is on the table, my lady.
Oh, you will stop to lunch then, won't you, Lord Caversham?
Oh, with pleasure. And afterwards, I'll drive you down to Gannage Street, Chiltern. You've got a great future before you. Great future. Wish I could say the same for you, sir. But your future will have to be entirely domestic.
Yes, Father. I prefer it domestic.
And if you don't make this young lady an ideal husband, I'll cut you off with a shilling.
Oh, an ideal husband. I don't think I should like that. It sounds like something in the next world.
What would you have him be then, dear?
He can be what he chooses. All I want is to be a real wife to him.
Upon my word, there is a great deal of common sense in that, my dear.
You are not coming, Robert?
Gertrude, is it love that we feel for me? Or is it pity only?
It is love, Robert. Love and only love. For both of us. A new life is beginning.